Hello, everybody. We are going to have a little bit of a chat about TI7, mainly a recap, looking back at the things which have happened, community feedback as well, but primarily just going to start on my own experiences at TI7. So we can start with me saying that TI7 was actually the event I most enjoyed out of all of the TIs. Primarily because I got to cast a hell of a lot, there was very little stress, everything was very smooth for talent, so on that front, I really enjoyed TI7. You may also notice, though, that TI7 didn't really go out of the box compared to what TI6 did. We saw the same stage mapping. A little bit more was they tried to make the water map actually onto the stage, which was kind of cool. A little bit buggy in some places and got a little bit old after a while, but it was the only real thing which stood out for TI7 more than any other TI. And I think the easy way to just explain why that happened is that it seems like there's been a bit of a management change at Valve. So there's different people that we were talking to this time that was running TI. So it was a very different kind of atmosphere, and I can understand them just trying to make sure that they get it through smoothly with no big hiccups and focus on some other things. So I'll break into the panel talent selection in just a second. But first, I kind of want to talk about the lead up to TI. So the lead up to TI, we had our 2 majors. So we went from 3 majors before to 2 majors, and obviously now we have everyone doing majors and minors. But the thing which was really pissing me off, and I think pissed off a lot of the community, and Valve understood this, hence their changes to the system, was primarily the fact that the majors were not really special anymore. They were just being done for the sake of being done. Nothing made them stand out. Nothing made them unique. This is also because when you split the attention of Valve across multiple events in the year, of course they can't make everything massively unique and special. So it made sense that now they let everyone else have their creative freedom to go forward for their majors and minors and try and make them special, and this will then in turn force Valve to really step up their game at TI. And they also now can focus 100% on TI as opposed to splitting their attention. And you have to remember they are developers, they're not tournament organizers. So when you look at the tournament and you go, okay, well, why isn't this amazing on this front or that front or this front? It's like, well, okay, maybe they didn't think about that. Maybe they haven't seen that idea come up from other tournaments, or maybe they just got so much stuff to worry about that they don't really have the time to think about it. So yeah, anyway, building up is going to be better in the future. The fact that Valve will now be able to focus on just one event, and then they coordinate everyone else to do their cool stuff as well. Let's talk about the main event itself. So, well, actually not talk about the main event. We'll actually go to the group stage to start with. So the group stage found us having some technical problems. There were a lot of camera complaints. A primary reason for this one is Valve were actually using technology where the stream would come out from their offices. Now, the last time I had a wonderful feeling of this technology was back at TI1. So the system up at TI1 actually had us broadcasting inside the game. This would then transmit into Dota TV, and then that would be picked up with our camera perspective by the computer that was sitting in the Valve offices at Seattle. Now, this ensured that they could have a 1080p very stable stream going out, because they couldn't guarantee that at Gamescom, which was the location for TI1. But the issue was the data being sent was really crap. So the audio codec at the time was absolutely terrible. You may have noticed too the audio inside the game has massively improved. That's because Valve shipped a new codec. So the in-game audio was actually amazing at TI. It was on the same level as you would have had for any Twitch stream or YouTube stream or whatever stream you're watching out there. So it was really good. But obviously, when something disconnects on that front, it's not so great. And the code was being reworked because they fixed the cameraman thing, which is inside the broadcast stuff. So you're able to click that button now, which says the camera. I don't know if anyone's been in the spectator mode and seen a small little camera box appear next to them when they're in a broadcaster slot. But that was originally made for the earlier TIs. I think it was actually TI3 it was made. And it was meant to be so we could just control the camera, and it was cool. But the code was bugged, it never really worked properly, and it took until TI7 to actually get properly fixed. But it is fixed now, and it does work now. So yeah, the issue you were having was the fact that things would disconnect, the code would bug out. Everyone's had that issue when they watch in Dota TV, where the camera, if you use perspective camera for a second, it can bug out a lot of things. And that's kind of what happened, where things just went wrong. You may have also noticed, too, there was a little bit of audio delay. This is something which is actually built in to the servers, and Valve are still trying to find the solution to the problem. It's been reported for many, many years, but you'll probably notice when you watch highlight clips of games that the audio seems a little off, like it's 1 second out, and you're wondering why the hell that is. Now, the audio is sent through the servers, and then somehow in all of that process, 1 second worth of delay kicks in for the commentary. Now, you're getting all your game feed at the right time, so, hey, it's going to arrive, and you're going to hear all your game sounds at the right time, but the audio, the casters sound a little bit special, just because we're talking about things 1 second after it actually happened. So this was a problem which they still have. You'll find it when you load up your replays as well. It's just built into it, and they're trying to find a way to get around that. But during TI, that obviously happened. Now, I wasn't a big one to agree with what they were doing. Personally, for me, whenever you go to a LAN event and you rely more on code and technology to, like, just mainly coding inside the game to get a system to work for your coverage, there's so many things that can possibly go wrong with that you kind of want to lean away from it, because there's so many things that go wrong in a LAN event anyway. Things are going to break, that just adding more and more options to that list of things that can break is a dangerous thing to do. So I wasn't a big fan of that. I think we eventually got through the group stage as best we possibly could. The other option is you could have had like a bunch of us having XSplit at the streams, and that's what's happened in previous years, where we just have a computer which can stream out. And they didn't do that actually the year before. We had 4 streams in one big area, and it was a lot of resources at the very, very start. And Valve instead wanted to focus more on the main event, and they were able to do that. Like all of the gear, all the streams that were happening were actually going out from Key Arena. That's why we only had 1 day downtime between the group stage and the main event, because everything was already set up there. The panel every day was also at Key Arena. So it was new technology, trying to do the group stage, and really the underlying issue of the group stage is still going to remain when we have so many teams coming in. There's no way to really solve this unless you want to reduce the amount of teams or extend the length of the tournament. And maybe extending the length of the tournament is more of an option now that Valve is only doing one event. But the main reason why things were condensed so hard, and this happened through the qualifiers as well, so when you have the open and closed qualifiers and you wonder why we have so many games like layered on top of each other, the primary reason is Valve didn't want to take more time out of the Dota 2 calendar. They wanted to make sure there was more time for other events, and that was kind of the main reasoning that was at least shared with me about it all. So it was problematic to span out the days more. This does mean, though, like, you still want to hold true to having that many teams at TI. You want to have as many possibilities through the qualifiers to eventually have like a team get up into the top. And thanks to SG Esports and other teams like them, even just the OG lower bracket run, they're moving to the qualifier during the majors at the very beginning. Like, this is a good reason to support so many teams being there. The issue is you can't follow the storylines. It's an absolute nightmare in order to do so, because you're running 4 games at the same time for 3 to 4 days straight. So storylines are an absolute arse. So what do? Do you approach it by saying, okay, we're going to still try and do the storylines as best we possibly can. We'll have a summary panel, but basically it's a game grind. So for all those hardcore Dota fans out there that just want to watch more and more and more and more Dota, you're able to do so, and they just make the stream quality lower. As you notice, there was no filler, there was no anything. It was just like a splash screen that comes up between the games, and that was basically it. So it was very, very generic, is the best way to put it. And I saw a lot of feedback about that, talking about how other tournaments are able to make their group stage just so much better. And I agree. I actually really miss those storylines being told. There's a lot of teams. You can look at Hellraisers just as an example. They're a team that got knocked out in the first part. Now, most of you probably didn't even watch their games. They were losing so much, you wouldn't have checked them out at all. So there's no real advantage for teams themselves to get good exposure in the group stage if they lose, and they're going to have more problems down the track as well if they just continue to be that disappointment team being lost in the mass of group stage games. And this is something which may happen, as we're going to have qualifiers for every region, for every minor and major, or at least for the primary regions. So this could also lead to teams just being eclipsed by just a mass amount of games. So it's going to come down to the format as well of the tournaments. This is up to the minors and majors to work out how it's going to work, and maybe for Valve to change next year, where we run 1.5 weeks worth of group stage, potentially. The invites are allowed to take them into the main event or into a secondary phase of the group stage. There's many, many options for how you can modify the tournaments in order to make the group stage a lot more manageable. So this is just, I think, more of a... Understand the group stage was just a grind for a lot of people. Same for the teams. Obviously, every game meant a lot. But the credit wasn't really given to it through the streams, and they have to be aware of this. It's just the decision they made moving forward that resources and time and content would be invested more into the main event and not the group stage. Main event now. Obviously, broadcast was pretty smooth. I want to start off by saying, for the main event, there's a big misconception that PGL was running everything. Ever since we went to Key Arena, and even before Key Arena, it was a local TV company that's been doing it. Now, I don't remember the name of it, and really, I didn't dig into it much. But normally, when PGL runs an event, I have Vlad in my ear saying, hey, we're crossing to you now, or we're going to this. It wasn't like that. We had the female voice of their producer who was in our ear. So PGL was not actually running the show at TI. They were definitely there, and everything in-game is done by PGL. This is why they are the experts at that, so of course they're going to be used every single time. But it's just something you have to keep in mind where you say, well, man, PGL, let's not give them exclusive rights on this because, hey, where was all of our extra content? Where was our awesome, cool stuff here and there and here and, everything that PGL normally did before? They're not doing it this time. So why am I sitting through this again, and I'm not having TI being any more special? Now, this is on the back of Valve, who are the content creators. They're the ones who decide what content's being done. They obviously work with Slacks, who's creating some of their stuff. Also, make a point about Slacks. Don't let me forget about that later on. But it's just something to keep in mind that the content is created by Valve, or at least the structure for the content is created by Valve or that production team that comes in. It was not done by PGL. So PGL is still the in-game visuals and everything like that. They helped out with the talent as far as contract work and stuff like that goes, and they will probably do so in the future. But yeah, I would not class the International as PGL's event. You saw it in the majors where it said presented by PGL. And in that case, it actually was. They control the content. Obviously, Valve are going to have an influence when it's their major. So talent selection and stuff like that was still all being run and approved through Valve. So keep this in mind. When the minors and majors come up, and PGL, I believe, have 2 majors and 1 minor currently on the schedule, this is when you'll probably see what they do instead when they're outside of the constraints that is Valve. So, yeah, just wanted to establish that one as a clear fact because there were some misconceptions about this. What's next? Up on my list, let's do the Slacks thing now. So Slacks is one of these guys who I think is absolutely amazing. There is very few scenes that have somebody like Slacks. There are very few people like Slacks. Now, last TI, he was kind of doing anything and everything. It was disgusting because he was so dead tired on his feet, and the content was really kind of sacrificed because of that. And then they were forcing him to stage host. They were he hosted the cosplay. He was then doing video content after video content after video content. And we got the same kind of feedback as well after Boston, after Kiev, where it's it was just too much Slacks. And I agree. Slacks is one of those guys where he has a fantastic idea, he has shit tons of ideas, and not all of them have to be done. So you take the 2 good ones each day and then pump them up and then give that thing which you're going to remember forever. Remember, that's if you watch that video that Valve released about great moments, I said, if you're going like, it's your job to elevate something to be immortal, to last forever. This is the type of thing which, like, Slacks wants to do, where you make a meme that will last forever. So going inside the game, it was a fantastic opening ceremony, and the cool thing with Gabe, like, it was really nicely structured out. And I think Slacks was the biggest winner of this TI, where he's just able to have such great content being pumped out without it being an overload of Slacks. So I didn't have to basically, like, get a shot for a Slacks immunization. So it was fantastic. Main event kicked around. Obviously, for those that watched, I was only casting with Cinderin. I had one game where I cast with Blitz during the group stage, but that's just because we were sharing the load a little bit more. But it was really great to actually have a single co-caster. So we were able to build on our synergy. We knew exactly what each other wanted throughout the tournament. So I really, really enjoyed that. We got really lucky with a lot of our games too. The fact that we're watching one of the ones we cast right now, the VP versus LFY game, had some really long games, really awesome games, and fantastic feedback from the community as well. So I really felt like I stepped up a notch at this TI. I felt really comfortable with my casting. I felt really comfortable with Cinderin, and I don't think anyone really had too many issues with what we did. I don't think it was one of the very few events too where I don't think I said some really stupid fucking shit, which was really, really great for me. Like, I was very happy about that one. But it was just, all in all, just a really good feeling event. Also, with the 3 casting pairs only, it was a nice thing for me because it meant, like, we didn't have the same issue as last year, which was there was 4 play-by-play casters, and we kind of just sat around all day doing nothing. We'd come and do one series, and that would be it. Because I had the grand final this year, we had OD and Fogged do 2 series in one day, and LD and Lumi did 2 series in one day as well. So this is just kind of like the way it had to go to balance everything out. But we all ended up casting almost exactly the same amount of games. I think the only way to look at it is, as far as the series go, Odie and Fog probably cast 1 less. And that's because Sint and I did the 4 best of 1s on day 1, and I'm casting that as 2 series. So I did the math for it, so it was pretty damn close. But yeah, it was still really nice. I think having Fogged at the main event was fantastic. He worked his ass off throughout the year, but it was more than that. And maybe this is the next point to move into, and using Fogged as the best example, talent selection. So talent selection is one of these things which is very, very difficult. You want to be able to reward the people who worked in the year, but at the same time, you want to have a really good product with really good names on your product. Now, Fogged worked his way up so hard that he actually got respected as both a co-caster as well as an analyst. And he was everywhere. He went to almost every single bloody event. So it was fantastic for him that he actually pushed himself so hard and got the respect that he was needed to be in the talent somewhere. And he was able to get there. He was there at the main event. Now, I'm not saying this degrades any other work that other people did. Obviously, Gods was at many events as well, and he also only did group stages. So this is something which kind of gets into that gray area of who makes the decision, how do they make the decision, and it's kind of it's the minds of Valve, which we can only speculate about. But the speculation, at least I can have some level of informed speculation on that front, because I've also sat there thinking, hey, who the hell should we use as talent for events? So to say quickly about LD and Lumi is probably the biggest point to look at. Luminous is a person who obviously cast with LD in the past, is someone that Valve is very, they know a lot, and they can almost say Lumi brings something out of LD, which is good. But at the same time, I would have preferred to see LD with a stronger, more prominent co-caster to actually have bigger brands next to it. Luminous does appear here and there, has actually been appearing more and more of late, but I still feel there's other people who are stronger co-casters than he is. So in my mind, I'd like to have LD with a stronger pairing in the future. And this is something to which LD has to look into. He casts with Winter, but because Winter's English is not fantastic, it's very hard to put him into that casting role onto the big PAs. When the crowd's going nuts, it's not going to be clear to people who are watching, especially when you're having people just watching in English as their only language, or maybe English isn't their native language, so you need it to be clearer for this. So this is something maybe Winter could work on with voice training, just to get rid of a little bit of his tinge of an accent, but it's picking at semantics now. Like, it's looking at why you would choose Winter over somebody else, and so far that hasn't happened. Winter gets left on the analyst desk because he knows SEA really well, so they kind of want to use him there instead. Obviously, that didn't happen this time around. He was just casting this time around too, in the group stage. So talent selection is always one of those fun things where you want to think about the mood you have in your show. And that would probably bring us towards the panel, the inclusion of Day 9 and Machine. Now, Machine has hosted Des before. I think his first one was in Boston, and he did a fantastic job. And he made this very relaxed kind of atmosphere, but that was also because it was something that Valve was attempting there. We saw Pyrian Flax, we saw Shiva on the desk, and these were kind of like set markers on the desk, and then blended them with people like Fogged, Winter, and other analysts like Merlini, and try to create that fun kind of feel. And this is what you want to do when you're focusing on reaching a new audience. So TI this year had its newbie stream return. So you could easily see they were wanting the new audience to feel very at home. So what do you want to do when you have a new audience? You want to have something which is nice, crisp and clean, easy to understand, and moves from content piece to content piece to content piece. Now, we didn't stick too long on the panel. I think the longest time we had was just before the grand final, but even then there were still other things like the flashbacks, like the archives, like these kind of videos, the Slacks videos. We go to Casey and Slacks doing something which is a little bit very like community friendly outside. Like, it wasn't all just Dota talk. That's probably the reason too why we didn't have the draft panel this time around, because they tried to take the full seriousness out of it and just focus on the game itself. So when we did come back to the panel, we ended up having professional players or former professional players there on the panel, just because they were able to, like, they weren't the fun style of things. That was more pressure on Day 9 to achieve this, but they were able to do both roles of both draft panel as well as main panel. This is, in my mind, the reason why this was done, just because it allowed... I'm getting tripped up on my own words at the moment, which is pissing me off because I'm saying just because way too many times. Triggered myself. But it's one of these things where the panel was trying to do multiple roles and be that all-rounding kind of thing while still having fun. So there was pressure on Day 9 to do that. I think PPD was probably the godsend to that panel. He is really good at being serious when the time comes. He's got the respect of being a TI winner. And then he's also got that ability to have that cheeky little humor, which is very unique to PPD. So I think he filled that role very, very nicely. Understood when it was good to be serious, when it was good to be fun, and then blended the whole thing together. Day 9, obviously, he's out of his comfort zone when it comes to Dota 2. He's not a noob by any stretch. Like, he is learning the game. He's a very smart kind of guy. And he brought it was a very regimented view, I think, like, process to the panel. Like, it was like straight into this and straight into that, then into this. It was very, very like flow-based, which was really, really good for him, and I think good for the panel as a whole as well. So I actually like the Day 9 selection. You saw the difference in the styles when Machine came on to also host the panel. And this is just because Machine is used to a very different kind of structure. He also has done Dota 2 panel hosting before, so it also made sense for him to be a little bit more involved and a little bit more engaged. But, like, even simple things where, like, Day 9 was, like, throwing it over to the floor, and then Machine's like, I'm going to throw it over to the casters. This is just the difference between the two of them, where one is very much focused on, you know, I'm just going to go with the show flow, like, as minimal mistakes as possible. We didn't have any of those like red eye moments from last year, where it's like, and now we're gonna cross to an interview with VP No One, and that it's just like, oh, okay, no, this is actually Pasha who's on the camera. Oh shit, we fucked up. So by making it general, you avoid a lot of these fuck ups. So I kind of liked that front. I think also it was better because like the show format was a lot clearer this time around, so there was less fuck ups. So that's another one of those things, like, from the original point. Like, why were you focusing, like, why was there nothing really special that stood out? Like, we had Weatherman Purge appear last time, and we had this, and we had that. It was like, let's just make sure we have a tournament that runs, that actually works first. Next year, we can look into doing all this other cool stuff, and they'll learn from all the minors and majors, like what their creative things are. Because if Valve know one thing to do, just like the team fight recap and the pop-ups, like they can see a good idea and then take it and then develop it as well into their own. So, yeah. As far as that panel goes, I actually think using professional players, you don't just say, oh, okay, these guys, they didn't qualify, so why the hell should they be at TI? It's like, that's not the attitude to have. It's like, okay, yeah, these guys didn't qualify because the competition's so good. Everyone wants to be a player, but you yourself understand why teams like competitions like the Summit are really, really fantastic, because they bring the pro players onto the screen. And this is what ended up happening. So you get a talent selection, but then you're still going to use the players who are competing. They get knocked out. Were you bitching the fact that Sumail was going to be on the panel? Of course you're not. Everyone wants to see Sumail. All the fans of Sumail want to see him. Everyone that follows the team EG wanted to see Sumail there talking about Dota. And then he actually gave over some really good points. Now, what do you sacrifice in order to have this? You sacrifice the chemistry, which is built up by people like Merlini, Gods, Cap, all these guys who will normally find themselves gravitating towards panels, and you see throughout the minors and majors. So, of course, you're going to have withdrawals the second you don't get what you've been having for this entire year so far. So, it makes sense, and I understand the community is going to be pissed about that. At the same time, you also should understand that while you might be pissed about that because you're a fan of that exact talent and you want to see that talent on screen, the rest of the people who are tuning in probably are not annoyed about that. They're going to be more excited to see a former professional player. I think you probably could have gone a little bit more in-depth, Valve, as far as like showcasing the professional players. Like when you introduce the panel, you would say, former TI winner RK at TI3, here is an awesome clip of him, and actually introduce the panel at the start. If they're going to have this full NBA style panel, which it did look sick, by the way. It looks sweet as hell. The group stage one was like the couches, and you're like, what the hell is this? But then you had like the big set, and you could see the reason why like Valve wanted to make the main event look better than just the group stage. So that made a lot of sense. But yeah, like you'll have someone like Shaquille O'Neal, legend of his time, and he'll go onto a panel. So you got Shaq on a panel, and every NBA person's going to know exactly who he is. But because some people are coming later into Dota, they may not remember TI3. They may not know who RK is. They should know who PPD is, but then maybe you could do a little bit of a, hey, this is who this guy is, and then people will start to respect it. So it's, and more than just like a lower third overlay saying e.g. Sumail or something along those lines. So it's still the right idea, and this is something where I'm going to quote a very old caster who, like, I'm talking about like players having to have little blurbs to say who the hell they are, but a guy called Mad Mortigan, and Mortigan came up to me at TI2, and like we were casting Dota a while back. He actually was part of Dota Cast. He was one of the first guys to actually do video streaming for Dota casting, and he said to me at TI2 that he quit casting because he basically said there's no future for us. He didn't actually think that there'll be a future for commentators who weren't professional players. And in a way, he was very, very right. But I don't think about the play-by-play side of things. Play-by-play is still a very unique talent. And I haven't seen many professional players that really do it smoothly. There's some that can do it because they're just entertaining personalities anyway, but they don't do it smoothly, and they don't take it to like the top level you need to be a tier 1. Like Notel's fantastic. He's massively entertaining, but you wouldn't get him to try and like compete with like myself, LD, or OD Pixel. You don't really want to see him compete on that level, and he's wasted at that level anyway. So I think play-by-play guys are fine, but analysts are always going to have that issue where you need to have the reputation for people to respect what you're talking about. And the easiest way to get that respect is by having them either, hey, win a TI, then you can talk to me kind of style, or you just have them as respected professional players. This is a problem for a lot of the analysts that we use because a lot of them are not professional players. So I know Nahaz was bringing up like the issue of Trent packs. People probably remember him as Mod Packs. So you're saying, okay, well, he should have been there, right? Well, the easier answer is no. Because he wasn't a professional player, at least not at a high enough level. Yeah, he may know about the game, and he definitely will say something interesting at different points. But if I'm sitting there looking to hire people, and I've got a choice between Arke and Trent Packs, I'm gonna take Arke. I have a former TI winner who's gonna present himself really, really well. And if I just took maybe a day to do like some media training for him, to present himself on camera, to work on that kind of stuff, like, I'm gonna get a better result for my tournament out of having Arke on the desk than I will having Trent Packs on the desk. And this is what all the analysts have to fight against. They have to fight to make themselves useful. Now, there's some people like Purge who you want to use because he's found himself this perfect niche category where he makes a lot of online videos which train people to understand Dota 2. He works with Day 9 to help, like, as a tutorial kind of thing. So he's got this real great reputation to be the educator of the Dota 2 scene. So what are you going to do? You're going to have him do an educational segment. Of course you're going to do that. So these are the type of things where, as a talent outside of TI, you're able to showcase what you can do and what you want to do at events. And then maybe you can even team up with an event to say, you know what, I can make this one thing which is going to be better than what anyone else can do. And it doesn't matter about the reputation of a professional player. I can do this, and you'll want me to come in and do this. So, yeah, this, for me, is a reason why the talent desk probably ended up the way it was. Valve was looking for respectable players who are going to give them the concept they wanted, which was the ability to merge both draft panel as well as fun panel together. And on top of that, they wanted to basically have the reputation and the images of these former professional TI players. Obviously, they had some interesting decisions. CCNC is one of those ones where you're like, well, maybe he wasn't the best choice out of it all. But they also will learn that. CNC will learn from the event too, so he can come back a little bit stronger and think about what he has to do to make himself more appealing for camera and for new people. So it was, overall, I think, a nice experiment. I'm not a fan of experimentation at TI, but now because of the minors and majors, maybe Valve are actually able to have some kind of recommendation saying, hey, we want to try this out. Do you guys think you can do this? Like, this is an option for them in the future. So it's not just, like, rolling the dice at the biggest event of the calendar year of Dota 2. So, yeah, nice on that front. Okay, so what else did I have? I think we're approaching the end of everything else that was really brought up. So, reason for talent selection, reason of production quality. Moving forward, I think it's going to be fantastic for the year. I love the fact we have these minors and majors now in the hands of third parties. It's bringing a lot of interest back into the scene as far as money goes. I believe the calculation was done where, because of all the minors and majors, Valve is actually spending more money into prize pool than they have previously. Obviously, they still want to make some money, and we'll see how they work out the battle passes. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how all that moves forward. Hopefully, the item creators get some nice times ahead too. I don't think anything has really been said about that yet. So it's overall, I enjoyed TI7. I thought it was actually a fantastic event. I thought it was very clean, very crisp, and very enjoyable for myself. I felt like I did a good performance there. I think the feedback also reflected that. It was one of the very few TIs where I don't think I actually had hate mail being sent my way of like, man, you're such a shit caster. I wish we had blah, 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 or blah, blah, blah casting instead of you. So, yeah, personally, I feel like I did a good job, and I hope to do more good jobs in the future, keeping myself fresh, keeping myself ready, and ready for TI8 and all the minors and majors coming up. So, yeah, that's going to be my TI7 summary. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll keep streaming for a little bit, and, of course, subscribe up to my channels. I realize I'm saying that right now as I'm streaming on Twitch recording this, but check out my YouTube channel as well, where I'll also upload this video, youtube.com/TobiWan. That's it. All right.